Appeasement and the start of World War II. Look at everybody shaking hands trying to be happy. It's not going to last. The Treaty of Versailles regulations in 1919. So let's start with the very beginning. So pre-Depression, pre-World War II, we had World War I. And remember from the Treaty of Versailles, it did not end up well for Germany. They basically took all the things that worked with the Treaty of Paris for Napoleon, and we're like, haha, no, we're going to do the exact opposite. And it didn't work at all. But Germany accepted the blame for World War I, even though somehow it was Serbia's fault, and whatever. It was Austria's fault. It was Serbia's fault, but no, it's really Germany's fault. So Germany accepts the blame. They're forced to pay $30 billion in reparations, which is a freaking ton of money for the time. Germany lost territory. So they lost the Polish corridor, they lost the Sark goldfields, which Alsace-Lorraine, which is fine, but like a lot of its resources, they lost their farmland and they lost their coal fields, which they need to industrialize. Let's remind ourselves that this tends to be a war for resources. It's lost territory, lost land. Land equals money equals power. Just remember. Keep remembering. So, Rhineland is demilitarized, which just means that you can't have any fortifications, any bases, you can't put your soldiers there. So it's yours, but you can't defend it. And then Germany's military is limited to 100,000 men and no submarines or airplanes. To put that into perspective, the American military is, let's see. Highest number of active duty personnel, which was in 2010, we had 479,785 active troops in the Army alone. National Guard was 336,000, Navy was 332,000, Air Force was 327,000. So we have well over that on a regular, and that's not even counting the people that we could pull up for reserves. So that's not the National Guard. That's not the Army Reserves or anything. So 100,000 people is a joke. It's a joke. 1933, Adolf Hitler is becoming the Chancellor of Germany and wants Lebensraum, or living space, around his country. So once again, if you remember from yesterday, the rise of the fascists, Hitler came into Germany and thought it would try to be an artist, and that didn't work out really well for him. Got into politics, got into the Socialist Party, blamed the communists for some problems, blamed the Jews for some problems. He gets elected to be the chancellor, which is awesome. He was an elected official. People are like, yeah, he's great, because, he's helping their economy. And to help their economy, he needs Lebensraum, or living space. He needs space. He needs those coal fields back. He needs that farmland back. And so he's going to go get it. See, look, he's having a discussion. He's like, hey, what are we going to do? How can we get our people to be prosperous again? And they pull out a map and they're like, okay, we need this spot and this spot. It was ours anyway, so why can't we have it back? He also announces this is in 35. So in 1935, Hitler announces the expansion of the Wehrmacht to 600,000 members. 6 times the number permitted by the Treaty of Versailles. So he's upping the military. And that's twofold. One, it's just purely protection. Having a large military is kind of important, especially in the time where militarism is a big thing still. So the U.S. still has a massive standing army. The Britain and France still have a pretty large standing army. And you would like to be on that world scale. So you have to have a large standing army. The other side of that is it gave men back jobs. So we talked about this a little in class. I don't know if I got to it on the video yesterday, but in class we talked about the idea of gender roles and the man being emasculated and losing his manliness because he wasn't providing for his family. And he was weak and he was, not able to be a grand military person, which sounds really silly to us, but war was a really big deal back then. They glorified war and dying for your country and nationalism and stuff. So when men weren't allowed to do that, it made them feel less, and that whole toxic masculinity thing. Whatever. So he gives them back their purpose. So he's just gained more and more and more support from these men and essentially their families who have given them, like, they now have an income again. There they are, proud soldiers walking in a line. Yeah. 1936, Hitler claims Germany feels threatened and sends forces in to occupy the Rhineland. So he's slowly just taking things back. We took back our military. Now we're going to take back some land. So he claims that they feel threatened by basically France. Like, here's the Rhineland between them and France, Germany. The Rhineland, which they were not allowed to occupy with the military because they attacked France last time. Shocking. France also doesn't feel safe. So, because they didn't feel safe, that was in air quotes, they sent forces back in to take over the Rhineland. And if you can't tell, we're also going to take the Ruhr and we're going to take the Sudetenland. We'll take the Saar later. Yeah, we're just going to take everything back. And there he is going back into the Rhineland. Like, people adored him. They thought he was great. I can't stress that enough, that historically we look at Hitler as this horrible person. And he was. He sent millions of Jews to their death. He sent gay people to their death. He sent Russians to their death. He sent many people with mental disabilities to their deaths. Like, they had mobile gas chambers, guys. Like, they just drove a car around, put people in the back of it, murdered them. And then we're like, oh, we're doing you a favor, taking off all these people, because gay people can't function in society. Yeah, crazy times. So he's not a good person. But in Germany, he was doing great things. He was reestablishing their economy. He was giving them back jobs. He was giving them back their masculinity. He was taking back what was German. So they loved him. And they're pouring out in the streets in support of him. Like, this isn't a staged photo. Nobody was forced by gunpoint to come out here. Like, they were like, oh my gosh, he's so great. It's like if a star came driving by. 1938, Hitler wants Anschluss, or union with Austria. This was also forbidden by the Treaty of Versailles. So if you're looking at the map, we have Austria is right here. Greater Germany. Austria was here. Austria is mostly German. They speak German. They have the same clothes. They have the same food. They have the same pretty much everything. Religious beliefs, government system. And they're like, hey, they're German. We're German. Why don't we be German together? And everybody was like, yeah, no, you're not allowed to do that. Like, you're supposed to stay small so that you can attack anybody. And they're like, yeah, but we're all German. And they're like, yeah, I'd rather you not. And they're like, hey, we don't speak English, so we don't have to listen to what you're saying. And when he got there, everybody was like, oh my gosh, thanks for saving us. Because everybody kind of benefits when your country's large. Like, I think we don't have a really good idea about that in America because we are gigantic. And if we had to shut our borders today, we would have enough food, we would have enough oil, we would have enough everything. We are completely self-sufficient. We only buy other people's stuff because we want to. Because we have a consumer culture. We don't have to buy from anyone for anything, ever. We are self-sufficient. Places in Europe are not because they're tiny. Like, some of them are smaller than Mississippi. They're tiny. They don't have the farmland to support their people. They don't have the resources to support all their people. They're not self-sufficient. Like, they may be able to feed their people, but they don't have the coal to provide the electricity. They may be able to provide the electricity, but they don't have the cows to provide beef and milk, which are staples in most diets. So, it's a pretty big deal. And Austria's like, oh my gosh, this is freaking fantastic. Now we're larger. We have more resources. We're more powerful. This is awesome because we're German and you're German and now we can be German together. And then, because everybody's still like, hey, Hitler, you still can't do all those things. And he's like, yeah, thanks. And he says his last demand, the last thing I'm going to ask for is the Sudetenland. It's the last thing I need. It's just a part of Czechoslovakia where 3 million ethnic Germans live. I'm just trying to reunite the Germans. And if you read the next point, you find out that it's actually home of 66% of Czechoslovakia's coal, 70% of its iron, and 70% of its electrical power. I know that he wanted to unite the Germans because of the whole Aryan race thing, but also those resources are a sweet bonus deal that had nothing at all to do with what he was trying to do. Probably. So without these resources, the Czech nation would be vulnerable to complete German domination. Basically, if you take that land, we don't have anything, so we are going to desperately need you. And he was like, yeah, no, your people are German, we're going to be German together, and that sucks for you. I mean, we'll take care of you too. We'll help you out too, Czechoslovakia. Just join Germany and start speaking German. It's fine. It's fine. And Czechoslovakia was like, hey, are you really going to let them do this? Like, guys, they're taking all of our resources. Like, doesn't this sound like imperialism to you? Doesn't this sound like, the beginning of war, an invasion? That's not really invasion because Czechoslovakia is Eastern Germany and they're too close to Asians, so we don't consider them real people in this class. That's not true. But that's pretty much all they're saying in Europe. They're not real Europeans. They're not real white people, so they're less important than the French or the British. And then you have to ask the question, what are the world leaders going to do? We've got president. We've got the Prime Minister of Britain. I'm honestly not sure who that is, and that makes me a horrible history teacher, but he's probably unimportant. And then, of course, Hitler with his fancy shorts. The Munich Conference. So they all get together in Munich, 1938. And notice they're the leaders of France, England, and Italy. Hello, Benito Mussolini, you can come play too. So another fascist, England and France, which are like the bastions of capitalism at the time. So they're all going to get together, and they didn't invite Czechoslovakia. I know that's crazy, and it's never happened before in history at all, except every time. But we didn't invite the person being invaded and having their resources taken, because remember, they're not actually white, so we don't care. Czechoslovakia's leaders are not permitted to attend. And Germany was allowed to annex portions of Czechoslovakia, including the Sudetenland. So he got more than what he asked for. He said, hey, I just want the Sudetenland, which, is a good chunk of Czechoslovakia. And they were like, oh, okay, you can have this spot, and the Sudetenland. Are you happy now? The answer is no. The answer is no, he's not happy now. Historically, this was a horrible decision on so many levels, like human rights levels, racist levels, trying to stop a war levels. Like, this was a horrible, horrible decision. And no one cared. And then Neville Chamberlain, who is the Prime Minister of England at the time, says, I have met with Hitler, and he agrees to peace in our time if we give him the Sudetenland. Now we have peace. Looking back historically, we know this is insane and definitely not true. Definitely not true. He was living with rose-colored glasses on, trying to find the best. Nobody wanted to have another World War I. And in fairness, that wasn't that long ago. Like, Neville Chamberlain was alive during World War I. Most of the people in Britain were alive during World War I. It had only been 20 years. It's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. There were still homes destroyed. There were still cities that didn't exist anymore. There are still fields that you can't walk across because they have so many bombs that haven't actually gone off but could. Like, Europe was just ravaged by World War I. Nobody wants to go back to that. So Neville Chamberlain took his rose-colored glasses, held on tight, and said, please, for the love of God, let's not have a war. Just give him what he wants. And as somebody who has a very, very demanding toddler, I can tell you that giving them what they want does not stop the crying or the demands. It probably just makes them worse, because then she thinks she can get away with stuff, and she can't. And Hitler is just as bad as a toddler right now. And everybody's so happy, like the women in the Czechoslovakia, they're like, oh, I get to be with my German people again, and they're crying, and they're so excited, and excitement, you've got awe, you've got pure, unadulterated crying. I don't know what this guy has, but I'm pretty sure it's a guy. He's married. You can see that. That's his right hand, though, so maybe he's just wealthy. I don't know. Winston Churchill, who is going to become the Prime Minister after Neville Chamberlain takes off his rose-colored glasses and realizes that he should just resign, says appeasement is like feeding a dragon, hoping he will eat you last. And he's not wrong. We sacrificed, as a world, like the world leaders, sacrificed what they considered as lesser countries so that they wouldn't have to suffer, so that they could try to avoid a war. And that's exactly what they did. They fed a dragon hoping that it eats them last. And that's one of the political cartoons. And if you can't recognize the style of this, it's by Dr. Seuss. He was a political cartoonist long before he wrote children's books, and the same style. So he was an American who was not a fan of staying out of the war. He very much believed that Germany needed to be put down, if you can't tell from these cartoons. He says, they appease you and you're just handing lollipops over to all these dragons that are about to eat you in complete ignorant bliss. In the beginning of this, German army attacks Poland. So I feel like Germany gets a bad rap for this because Russia also attacked Poland from the other side. So they kind of agreed to attack it together. They're like, hey, you take the west half, I'll take the east half. It'll be fine. We'll have a great time. We won't attack each other. That non-aggression pact we signed. And everybody gets more land. It's fantastic. That's what happened. So the German armies attack Poland. Cities are bombed. Ports are blockaded. Danzig is accepted into Reich. So in, I think it was 3 or 4 days, they take over all of Poland. And the world is ready for another war. Britain and France have to declare war with Germany. Chamberlain's declaration of our conscience is clear. Australia pledges full support. So they I guess in Chamberlain's mind, he's like, we did what we could. We have to declare war now. Like, we have to go to war. You can't take a white country. Gosh, I'm going to get fired over these videos. Please don't. Don't report me, please. But really. So we did what we could. We sacrificed others. We tried. We're going to war. And Australia is like, hey, we'll help you out. War. German troops invade Poland. Nazis bomb Warsaw. Chamberlain resigns. I already said that. And Churchill becomes the new British Prime Minister. And England and Germany are at war. Winston Churchill with his bulldog alcoholic self. Over here, Neville Chamberlain with his rose-colored glasses. Two very different men. One not ready for war, one very ready to go to war. Like, he's about to put someone down. He looks like an old boxer who had his nose broke one too many times. He probably did. He's legit. So, we are at war in the world. I'm so excited. And Franklin Roosevelt is over here at his desk, and he has got all his mics in front of him, NBC, CBS, another NBC, and ABC. And they're like, hey, sir, President, what will we do with the situation? And Franklin Roosevelt is like, America is isolationist and wants to avoid another deadly war. However, we must help our allies. And by that, he means we're going to sell them food and guns and military equipment and make a crap ton of money to get ourselves out of the Great Depression. Woo! Great time, America. Great time. Not everybody was happy being isolationist. I already said Dr. Seuss was not a fan of this. Home Sweet Home, Said a Bird in the Midst of a Blitz. Up to now, they've scored very few hits, so I'll sit on my canny, old Star-Spangled Fanny, and on it he sits and he sits. See, he even writes like Dr. Seuss, because he is Dr. Seuss. But that's the mentality. Like, hey, we're just avoiding a problem. Like, we're letting all these blitzes happen, and we're not doing anything about it until it hits us. It's just narrowly avoiding us. And of course, the stepping stones to glory, spineless leaders of democracy, they were holding, like, no holds barred. I kind of like it. Yeah. Appeasement, Czechoslovakia, Danzig, and then, like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And all these people that are not doing anything. And then my favorite up here, Boss of the Universe. Yeah. Clearly, still not a fan, Dr. Seuss. I was weak and run down. I had circles under my eyes. My tail drooped. I had a foul case of appeasement. Then I learned about guts. That amazing remedy for all mankind's woes. Now I'm taking it daily, and today I feel strong enough to punch Mr. Hitler right in the snoot. Let's get, like, weak, strong. This idea that America is being weak, that we're just not getting involved. And really, America didn't have a reason not to get involved. It's not like we had a major loss at the end of World War I. Like, we made a ton of money, and then we won a war. I think that's really what our administration was hoping to do again, was to make a lot of money and then come in late and win the war. But that's not really the case. It does not happen that way, as we all very well know. And then this is just the laughing because there's just, two different continents. It's the joy of living on a different continent. What a lucky thing we've got separate bits. So, like, the Stalin itch, Hitleritis, the Blitzbox, Nazi fever, fascist fever, Italian mumps. There's a dead cat, which I have no idea what that symbolizes, but it's kind of funny. And yeah, last one, get your ostrich bonnet here. Like ostriches put their head in the sand. Relieves Hitler headache. Forget the terrible news you've read. Your mind's at ease in an ostrich head. Yeah, like sticking your head in the sand. Like the controlling people and making sure that we don't look at the war in any other way. I love it. And that's all. So, at the end of the day, World War II is about to start. Tomorrow, which I'm so pumped about, we're going to start a war room where you have to make decisions based on the information given to you. Yeah, so we're going to make decisions, and you're going to have to win a war. So, good luck. Have a great day.